Hey, what's cracking? How are you doing today? Hope this video finds you well. Uh, if this is the first time you've ever watched, my name is Ricky Dye, and I went to prison when I was 15 years old, and I was there for 20 and a half years. And these videos are my attempt to try to dissuade someone else from making the same mistake. Stop them from hurting themselves, their family, people they don't even know. That's what the goals of these are. So I've started at the very beginning. I tell you about what happened, my crime, why it happened, tell you about being certified as a juvenile and sent to prison with the men. And like I said, I was there 20 years. If you watch all the time, hope that you've picked up your blessings today and that you're having a good day. The reason the video's running a little late today is I had dinner with one of the guys who subscribed to the channel. John Doe's son had a procedure close by the city, Oklahoma City, here close to where I live, and we met at a casino and had dinner together. So thank you for dinner, Raj, and I really appreciate it, and I appreciate everyone who's subscribed to the channel. I appreciate you guys. I need to get to 1,000 for YouTube to make me a partner, but if that never happens, that's okay with me. I'll still keep putting the videos up as long as people are encouraged by them. And with that, I want to jump into the video. There was a guy that asked me a question. Polly asked a question. He wanted to know about people who are institutionalized and they get out there and they go right back because they have some kind of comfort from being in prison. And I couldn't answer. I've answered every comment so far. If I ever get behind, I'll never catch up. But that was a question that just had too much to unpack. So I'll go through that before I get back to where I'm at in my story. So what happens is guys get out of prison, and I've seen guys get out of prison and they didn't have enough money saved up from being in prison, so they give them $50 when they leave and a ticket. And they take them to the nearest shelter and drop them. They get a bus ticket to the nearest shelter and drop them off. Or if there's a certain one they want to be at, they'll send them there. And I could not imagine what it would be like to get out of prison and be at a shelter with no clothes, no money but $50, no car, no one who cared about me. How are you going to get a job? Who's going to hire you? With a record of a felon, with no home, with no car. And you don't even have decent clothes to go to an interview in. So that's one reason people go back. I've seen that happen. Those people come right back. They can't do anything but steal something. That's their only option. So I was blessed that the day I got out, there were 52 people in my family waiting on me to meet me at my grandmother's house, to welcome me home. And I had a lot of support. My brother had a trailer that no one was living in. He let me and my wife live in. My wife had a car. We both got jobs and went straight to work. So we were able to make it. But without all that support, what happens is they're in prison. I never even bought a roll of toilet paper till I was 35 years old. Things like that you never have to think about. And then you get out here, and what happens is you sit in prison, and you're in there for years, and you look at getting out the way a Christian looks like going to heaven. You think, oh, when I die, I'm going to go to heaven. Everything will be perfect. It'll be good. Well, you sit up in there in that penitentiary thinking, once I get out of prison, everything's going to be good. And then you get out of prison and everything isn't good. And maybe you were someone in prison. You know, there were times when people get some dope on the unit and I might not have no money, but they'll give me some because they're not going to sell it to this homosexual over here that they look down on because he has money and not give me some because I'm a good dude. So you become someone in prison, and then you get out here and you're no one. And you thought, oh, I'm going to get out. It's going to be like Christian going to heaven. You get out here and it's really hard. It is really hard on someone who's been to prison because people hold your crime against you. It's hard to get a decent job. You can get a job that no one else wants to do. They're very backbreaking jobs. And even for me, with all the support I had, there were days I was back there busting tires on that tire machine thinking I'd rather be in a cell reading a book. So that's what happens, and that's where that comes from. And maybe in the future I can get into that a little more. But for now, I hope that's a good answer, Polly. And now in my story, I've went back to Lexington. And for me, it's like I would imagine it would be like if you go off to college and then come back to your hometown. I would imagine that is the way I felt. Because there was definitely a different feeling. The first time I went here, I was terrified, didn't know what to think. But now I've come back to here. And I was here for almost a year, and I was fighting all the time. And people know I was fighting. And now I have a little reputation that Ricky Dye's got hands. He's got hands. And he just came from McAllister. And I haven't stabbed anyone yet. I haven't gotten a stabbing with anyone. Now that I've come back here, I want to prove myself. I want to be somebody in prison. I want people to think I'm tough and I'm a killer. So I don't want to have to go borrow a knife from someone. The last time I was here, I borrowed a knife and a pipe, and it almost got me in a wreck. So I don't want to go borrow one of those from anyone, because then you have to use it. So what I did is I went and bought me one, and I buried it in the flower bed on my unit. So I would have one. So now I'm running around with this blood. His name's BJ. And we're hanging out with this two white guys. One's name is Dave, and one's name is Tony. And I'm 19, and none of these guys are over 25. Dave was an airborne ranger. Okay? He was in for armed robbery. Tony was in for several robberies, and he was the oldest. He probably was 25, and then BJ was around 23 or 24, and he was a blood. And now in 92, 93, now the gangs are starting to come into prison. Before this, there really weren't no gangs. The Bloods and Crips had started in California. Now they were migrating to Oklahoma. And people were trying to say they were wannabes. They were wannabe gang members. But the way they were worse than the ones that considered themselves true gang, because these guys were out to prove themselves. But the difference was, in the street, it's easy to shoot someone, man. It's a whole different level to take a knife, especially a homemade one, and stick it into someone. So there's a couple ways that you get knives in prison. One is you go find you a piece of good wire somewhere, maybe off of a mop bucket or something, and you can keep bending it until you break it the size you want, sharpen it on the concrete, put your handle on there with strips of sheet, tore up strips of sheet. The other thing you can do is you can take a pair of toenail clippers and you can break it open. And you can put a little handle on it, and you can use the sharp edge of it to scrape this metal, either on the edge of one of them old army bunks, or on the light in the cell, the light fixture, or maybe the desk. Find you a piece of good thick metal, and you take and you just keep scratching it with that pair of toenail clippers. Scratch it, scratch it, scratch it, deeper and deeper, until you get that deep enough that you can bend it and break it off. And then you sharpen it on the concrete. And that's how you make knives in prison. But a lot of times, those homemade knives, like the clothes you wear are scrubs, and then they have like these blue jean coats they hand out. But the problem is, sometimes them homemade knives won't go through that stuff. And you can stab really hard, but you can't get penetration. But the ice picks, they work every time. And so I'm going to tell you about the first stabbing I saw in prison. So Tony, when he was a kid, he had been doing these robberies, and he would go to pawn shops and sell this stuff, pawn it and sell it to these pawn shops. And the way he got caught was, this guy told on him, and he gets locked up, and they offered him a deal to keep from spending 20 years in prison to get a lesser sentence. He had to tell them where he sold this stuff. He had to go around and show them where it was at, who he gave it to, so they can get the stuff back to the people it belongs to. But everything that you do, anything that has to do with your trial, that's in the law books. And they have that stuff in the law library. So somebody gets to looking through there, and they find his name, Tony, and his last name. I won't say that here. But because he had went and pointed that stuff out, they're saying he's a rat. Which, it depends on how the way you look at it. I didn't feel like he ratted, because he was just telling them where the stuff is so the people can get it back. But they're saying, well, he's getting the people in the pawn shop in trouble. But he didn't get anyone else trouble. So I was hanging out with him. I didn't feel like he had done anything wrong. We're all young. Young people are stupid, man. Me and my fall partner, we told on ourselves. We didn't know any better. Like, we were telling on ourselves, and we didn't know. Like, just by admitting we were at the store was placing us there. But we didn't know that. Like, we were telling the truth. We did this, but it wasn't on purpose. We didn't realize that by admitting it at all, we were pleading guilty, more or less. Didn't matter if it was on purpose. It was in the middle of a felony. But we didn't know that. We were just trying to be honest about it. We felt bad for what we did. So these guys are trying to call Tony a rat, okay? So he wants to know who it is calling him a rat, because if someone calls you a rat, you have to trace down the source, find out who said it, and you have to go confront them about that. So it all goes back to this old man named Butch. And Butch is supposed to be a killer, and he's a gray-headed old man, but he works out all the time. He's one of them guys that, 55 years old, that you look like you can still bounce a quarter off their stomach. He's been in prison all his life. All he does is work out. Come to find out, he's the one that's calling Tony a rat. So we're coming out of the chow hall. Tony tries to confront him. They throw a couple punches. Tony's a lot bigger than Butch, way bigger. Tony's like 6'4", 6'5". He's heavy set. He's not a real athlete, just a big old country fed guy. Butch is a lot smaller, but he's real muscular. So Tony grabs him and rushes him up against this wall and pushes him all up in these trees and hits him a couple times. Butch just realizes he can't handle him hand to hand. Butch has been in a long time. Butch runs to get his knife. So Tony's just standing there. I'm like, man, you can't just stand here. That dude's going to get a knife. And he's like, well, we'll have to go get ours. So we go back to the unit, take him down to the cell, get his knife. He's got a knife in his vent. And it's a big old long thing. It looks like a sword, but you can tell it'll probably bend. And I'm telling him, that ain't a very good knife, dude. It's like, that's all we got right now. I said, I got one. No, I'm going to use this. And so they say, Butch is at the gate. So Butch is out. He's done back down to the unit trying to get Tony outside. So Dave, he goes outside to check the situation out. Him and BJ, they're out there checking it out. And BJ come back down there telling us what's going on, who's out there. And Tony's about to run out there, and I stop him. Man, you can't go out there like that. Hold on, dude. He's like, what do you mean? I'm like, you got some tape? So we found some tape and grabbed some magazines, and I take these magazines together, and I wrap them around him like armor, like body armor, and I take some ace bandages and strap them on him. And then I have him wrap a towel around his neck, magazine right here, taped on, so he can block with it. So I tell him, he's going to have a knife. You better be ready to knife fight when you go to that gate, dude. He's going to attack you. But he's thinking it might not happen. You can tell he's scared and he's afraid that it's going to happen, but he don't want it to. So I wrap him up in these magazines and he walks out. I walk out first and I'm standing out there and I'm standing just outside the gate. Butch is standing over here. As soon as he sees Tony, he walks and he's standing right where I'm at when Tony comes through that gate and they start stabbing each other. And Butch would have killed Tony probably if it not had been for them magazines. They start stabbing each other right where I was standing. I backed up. Butch ran in and he hit him, bam, 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 in the gut several times. And you see paper flying. And it shocked them both. Even though Tony knew he had him on, he looks down. He's surprised that he's not getting hurt. And Butch realizes what's going, so he tries to stab him in the face. When he does, Tony steps back and stabs him in the face, catches him up here and goes down through his eye. Don't kill him, but he lost his eye. It took his eye out. And when he stabbed him, Butch screamed, ah! First thing that hits the ground was the back of his shoulders. And he was right back up, trying to stab. They're stabbing the shit out of each other, man. And when Tony stabbed him right there in the head, it bent his knife. And once he realized the knife was bent, he threw it over where me and Dave were standing. It hits the wall and falls right there by us. Now, the tower's right up there. It can look down and see us. And there's also guards inside, but they can't see through that brick wall because we're just outside the unit. It's kind of a blind spot. But he throws that knife and me and Dave grab it. And we take off over there and go over there by where I got my knife in the flower bed, kind of not by it because I don't want them to get them both if they find one. But we go down there and dig a hole and stick that knife in there and cover it back up. Run back out to the gate. So by now, Tony has thrown Butch down the ground. He's a lot bigger than him. And he's got him on his back in the ground and he's got this knife held down like this and it's pushed down into the ground. And Tony's got a hold to this arm and on this side he's got his knee on his shoulder, so he's got him like this. And Butch ain't letting go of that knife. And I run over there by him and I say, dude, the police are going to come any minute. They're going to come over and they're going to get that knife. Butch, give me the knife. I'll get rid of it. But Butch ain't getting rid of that knife. He don't trust me to take that knife. He won't let go of it. So Tony's holding that hand down. He's got his knee on his shoulder and he's driving him with elbows. And Butch's whole head is swollen up. His eyes bleeding. You can't see his eyeball. This is just one lump. He won't let go of that knife. Here in a minute, here comes the police, sure enough. And they get him, wrestle him down, get him loose, get that knife away. Tony stands up, pulls his magazines off like a warrior, slaps him down on the ground. They handcuff him up. He walks to medical. Same thing with Butch. Cuffed him up, walked in medical with his fucking eyeball like that. Excuse my language. Both of them lived. Butch was stabbed 16 to 18 times. Can't remember if it was 16 or 18. Tony got stabbed 7. And I've seen him several times through the years, and every time he sees me, he tells me I saved his life. Those magazines, and I probably did. Butch had a way better knife. It was good steel. It was sharp. I don't know how he got it, but he had a nice one. And Tony's was a piece of crap. They never found Tony's knife. They did get Butch's, of course, out of his hand. So that was my first stabbing in a prison, and they were stabbing each other right where I was standing, and I helped get rid of one of the knives. So I'll tell you about that because everybody already got in trouble for it. Doesn't matter now. So the deal on the news that we've been talked about, haven't found any more about it except for that at Dick Connors, it was one inmate stabbed another and he killed him. So someone was stabbed to death, and that's what that prison lockdown was about. And I haven't found out if it was gang-related or one race against another, but I still am laying my odds that it was, and that's why they locked down the whole prison instead of just one. Those cell phones, they're vicious. So this video is a little late, like I said, because I went and had dinner. So I'm going to cut it off right here at 15 minutes. I'm going to try to keep them more around 25 to 30 because people have asked for the videos to be longer. But because this is one up late and I've told you the whole story, I don't want to just try to start on another one and carry you through a whole nother thing. So hope that the Lord bless, keep, and protect you and your family. And if you haven't hit the subscribe button, man, I appreciate if you do that for me. Please share it on social medias. Join us on the Discord. If you haven't hit me on Facebook yet, became my friend, please do that. Especially you guys from Australia and Ireland and Switzerland, all these other countries. If you guys subscribe, man, friend me on Facebook. I would love to share pictures with you, see where you're from, get to know you, man. So hope to see you in the next one. Peace out.